Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I have the wonderful privilege of introducing one of my co-authors in the book, Rising Above the Rest. So let me just share what this book cover looks like because I'm really, really happy about how this book cover turned out. And I just realized that I'm bringing up a cover that is not the latest one because we actually achieved #1 bestseller status, and this cover doesn't reflect that. So this is the book that I have the privilege of co-authoring with 12 other amazing investors, and one of them who is on this broadcast with me today. So Marc Robillard, I'm going to introduce you. Okay, and then I'm going to share the stage with you because I want to ask you some more questions about your wonderful chapter. So let me introduce Marc a little bit, and I'm reading it from his chapter. So please excuse me while I read this. Okay, so real estate investor, Marc, specializing in finding and creating value, exits deals in profitable land assemblies, generating value as a housing provider, which I love that description, expert in creating communities through long, medium, and short-term rentals, financing and dealing on both sides of borrowing and private lending, on strata council of 150 complex with some residential and commercial units, coaching new and intermediate investors. And so in the links below, in the comments below, I will include Marc's contact information so that you can reach out to Marc on your own. So Marc, welcome. I'm so happy and privileged to have you on this call. How are you today?
Thank you, Huong. Thanks for the kind introduction. I'm happy to be with you. I'm very well from my home in Port Alberni, and happy to be here. Happy to have participated in that book with you and the 12 other lovely people, and really excited to put our network on steroids.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of questions to ask you about your chapter. So one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that Marc and I actually sat down in my kitchen and dining room and we hashed out this content together, which is so like it was so much fun to do. And so I'm really, yeah, I'm super privileged and honored to have you sharing that experience with me. So my first question to you, Marc, is why did you decide to share this particular story?
Well, I'm going to go back to being in your kitchen and doing it. I've never written anything before. I think probably, I mean, I'm 58 now, and I probably wrote an essay or two in high school, and that's the only time I remember writing. So it was a fun process, and I really thank you for the help polishing it up and putting it all together. And why I chose to write about this, like I've done a lot of things in real estate, but this one kind of has my heart a little bit. So it's my first strategy I executed successfully, and it's a first, yeah, strategy that was not only about money, it was also about lifestyle. And I still do a little bit of it today, not to the extent I did in the past, but I just love it. And it started from traveling and going to youth hostels, and within, it seemed like within minutes you could get so close to people, you make friends like
Mhm.
this, and I wanted to recreate that, and I actually did better than I was hoping in creating it. So
Mhm.
and it was such a, people say you can't have your cake and eat it too, but every day in this house, I felt like I had my cake and was
Yeah,
eating it too. So
yeah.
it's fantastic.
So now, when you started the strategy, did you know what house hacking was, or did you just happen to stumble upon it and realize years later that it was actually called house hacking?
I had no clue what it was. My objective was to start a youth hostel, but I couldn't really get the zoning for it, or and I wasn't really sure. And I was looking at student rentals, but then there was, at the time, I had a girlfriend who was inspiring to me, and she had a one-bedroom condo, it was tiny. And she described, oh, I'm just going to build like a room, which was literally like, if you could see how far my arms go, that's how wide it was, by about 8 feet long. And she's like, it'll be perfect. I can have a student in there. They can put their suitcase in front of the bed. And I'm like, how are you going to rent? How much are you going to rent that for? I said. And she's like, my friends are doing it. $500 I'll get. I mean, in those days, that was a lot of money. We're talking 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, that's such a good business model. And I watched her do it, and I thought, wow, what if I did this on a bigger scale and not put people in a room this big, but a real big room?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it started.
And you know what? That's how I started as well. House hacking was my very first strategy, and my second, and my third.
Nice.
So yeah, and I did that before I even knew what house hacking was. So so that was really good. So now one of the things that you talk about in the book is you talk about 10 gears, and
Yeah.
you talk about your real estate journey in 10 gears and trying to, have that analogy. Can you summarize this idea of the 10 gears for somebody who hasn't read the book yet and is just about to pick it up and start reading it?
Oddly enough, I had a way clearer picture of what my 10 years would be when I first started, when I bought that first house. And I'm actually seeking for that clarity now. I'm working on it. Because I'm not in the same position I used to be. So when I started that house hacking, that was in 2004, and I I really had a job I loved, but it was not very lucrative and it was seasonal. And I didn't. It was just driving towards a cliff, financially. I was doing all right at that time, but I was only working 6, 7 months a year, but I loved it and I didn't want to quit. But I wanted to be able to retire. We have no pension. We have no job security
Mhm.
in forestry. And anyway, the branch I chose. And I thought, okay, well, I gotta find a plan B so I can, when I get older, I can retire and I can live comfortably. So I thought, okay, well, my vision at the time was to buy a house and then make sure it would pay for itself from the rental. And then
Mhm.
house hacking seemed to be the easiest way to get a little edge on top of what you'd get from a normal rental.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, in today's economy, when prices are where they are and interest rates are where they are, sometimes taking a step back and saying, okay, instead of buying a house on my own, can I house hack? Can I do it an alternative strategy? Right. Which is what you ended up doing.
Yeah,
And your comment about, I had a job that I loved, but the reality was that you weren't going to be able to retire with that job. Right.
correct.
So good on you for realizing that. So in your chapter, you mentioned these gears. Of all of the gears that you mentioned, which one would you say you cannot skip this one gear? You have to make sure you include this gear.
Oh, that's a good question. It's funny
Okay.
because yeah, that's a good question. And to go back to the gear idea, I don't know, I kind of use it as a car analogy, but it could have been a walking and taking steps and going from there to running. What gear would I mean, if you don't really have savings, get you're not really gonna get anywhere. So that's a very important one
Mhm.
when you start. But I think what was the most important one? I think what worked really well for me at the time was to uh, really maximize my payments and really accelerate how fast I was going to pay down my debt and build equity. And
Yeah.
that got so exciting. Like you, I never thought having a mortgage would be exciting, but watching it disappear is sure a lot of fun.
So for those of you who are watching, and if you don't know what Mark's talking about, what he's talking about is when you have a mortgage, you actually have a lot of prepayment options to help pay down your mortgage faster. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're not going to go into that, but I will include a link to the GLAD method, which is something that I teach and promote as part of my coaching program. So I will include that in there because you are able to pay down your mortgage. Oh, you know what? Here, I can do this. So I have a book called Path to Mortgage Freedom in 10 Years. I talk about that. Okay, so okay, so perfect. So that is there. Now, you mentioned to me in the past about buying smart and selling smart.
Yes,
Can you elaborate on that for those who are listening?
absolutely. Now, in real estate, it's funny, you'll discover you have certain strengths and weaknesses. And I used to think mine was renovations, but it's definitely not. But where I did really well was to pick winners, pick good properties. And you have to be forward looking, but if you want to be forward looking, you also have to look at the past. So if I look, I did really, really well in Vancouver. And why did I pick to stay there? I mean, I picked to stay there one reason because I loved it. But another reason was because I thought the neighborhood I picked would do very well. And I looked at where I was geographically in relationship to downtown, and downtown was growing and we're getting densification. And I thought this area is just ready to change. And and it did. So that was a really good foresight. It's just looking forward. What's this going to look like 5, 10, 15? I didn't know I'd be there that long, 20 years, and I'm still happy there. But yeah, having a long runway to land will give you a really good indication of where to find value. And looking in the past too, I did really well with Whistler. And in Whistler, I bought because, I bought because I wanted to be there. So, but I also bought, I looked at historically prices in Whistler were higher than they were in Vancouver. And, and, um, and all of a sudden, the ski hill went bankrupt during the Olympics. Then our money got worth more than the US dollar. And Whistler was just flat. It just had gone through a real bad crash. And it lasted a long time. And after the '08 financial crisis, it never really picked up, but everywhere around, yeah, it was picking up. So then prices were much lower in Whistler compared to Vancouver. And that was kind of like I thought, this is going to change again. That was my opinion. And it did. So I was lucky enough to have a condo in just a few years, triple in value, which is something really nice to happen. Yeah.
There's so much knowledge in what you just talked about there, right? And so if you're somebody who's watching, somebody new to real estate, rewind this video to that part when Mark starts talking about how he bought smart, right? Because he touched on location, but he also touched on a lot of really good golden nuggets in that like last 4 minutes that he was just talking. So now Mark, touch base on the smart selling.
Smart selling. Yes. So it's important to have I find I've done well when you have what you want to do, have the end goal in mind. So I've done really well in one thing that you call land assembly. And for those who don't know what that is, a land assembly is when you get a whole bunch of properties with smaller houses and you lump them together to sell to a developer. And when you do this, what actually happens is you create value, because once you have, as a developer, more than 4 properties in Vancouver anyway, in other cities could be different. You're going to be able to rezone it and change the density. And in my case, I got 9 pieces of property together, and those 9 pieces of property as one was going to guarantee more density to the builder. But it's a very complex equation, and it's hard to know. That was my exit strategy from the day I bought the place, and it took about 18 years to implement it.
18 years ago. I'm just going to reiterate 18 years. Okay.
Patience comes to those who, yeah, you gotta be patient.
Yeah.
But I had an ace up my sleeve because that property cash flowed really, really well. So I was in no rush to sell. But when I saw there were high rises coming closer and closer, I thought, okay, now I could really cash out and use that money somewhere else. And I did really well. So, I mean, even if the land assembly never happened, for the reasons I mentioned earlier, the whole neighborhood went up. So everybody would have done well. But I sold double market value, which is, yeah.
That's great. That's so fantastic. Yeah, it's such a great story. Because land assembly can take quite a bit of time, as you just demonstrated, but it also does require you to have deep pockets, right? And be very patient with it.
Yes.
It can go quite wrong. So my next question for you, Marc, is can you give 1 or 2 tips on how to build better quality relationships from your expertise in house hacking?
Yes. How to build better relationships. It's interesting when in the realm of house hacking, if I look at first, I was scared. How am I going to fill this house? And the best tip I can give you is do not be in a hurry. You're way better off to have an empty space than a space filled by the wrong person. And I was lucky, like I fell onto really nice people, and I had the odd person that didn't really match the rest of the house, but it was rare. And taking your time, asking lots of questions, I actually looked at what if people had passions. So I didn't really care if it was bird watching, which I know nothing about, or if it was music, or if it was skiing, which is something I am passionate about. But I just wanted people that had passions, goals, and envies. And then that was one way that really helped me creating not more money, because in theory, they would pay the same whether they get along or not, but just harmony. And it was a fun journey.
That's a great answer, because you're right. Like, to build stronger relationships, it's good to know what makes the other person tick, right? And so if you can find out what that person's passion is, it definitely helps. All right. Okay, here's a bit of a tough question. What is one regret that you have in real estate?
Oh, one regret. Well, there's a few, but
okay, you can name all of them, but really the top regret that you have.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't name the one in the book. Was not having the one in the book was a condo in Whistler that I missed my luck on. And I called it this one the one that got away, because it was a fantastic investment. And if I did this, I would have gotten into house hacking, even though I didn't know what it was. But that place was perfect for that. And I'm actually the perfect candidate to do this, because I'm an extrovert. I love being around people, and I love building communities. So it was that property I described in the book, which was in the creek side, and it was a split level. So you came and you had 2 bedrooms down, which they didn't even need to come through the living room. So if they wanted privacy, they could have gone there. You wouldn't have seen them. Then you had a big kitchen and a living room on a 1 floor, really big. And you had a bedroom in the mezzanine. And that was really affordable, and it would have been really, really easy to put people in there. So that when I missed that one, I was upset, and then I went and bought the first thing that fell onto me, which was a piece of land, which was, I'm glad I did it, but if I do it over, if I missed that one, I would look for one the same, not go buy just a random thing.
Okay.
And, yeah.
So if you are the owner of this place that Marc is talking about, reach out to Marc because he wants to buy it.
Yep.
All right. That's funny. Okay, so I have one last question for you. Okay, and then we're going to go into the hot seat. Okay. So what is a piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's new to real estate?
Don't wait too long to invest. And I, part of the reason I wrote this is I mean, I mentor some people, some I coach officially, others I kind of try to help make decisions that are smart for them. And I find I waited way too long. And that it really explains it well in that book. And there's a saying out there says, don't try to time the market, just try to spend time in the market. And yeah, that's the advice I'd give people. And it's hard now to get in. And also why I used house hacking is because I look at my daughter and she's 32 and it's really hard for her to find a place to live, and she's really smart financially, but she's not an extrovert, and house hacking wouldn't really work for her. But there's so many, if you're creative, there's so many ways you can make things work. And I think younger people, if you don't want a house hack, you could, for example, the house I live in is on 4 separate floors, so you could have 4 friends buy 4 units and just have their own unit within that unit. So you could, it's not subdividable yet where I am, but if you buy with friends, pool your resources and find the right property, that's a very powerful way to be able to afford something in this unaffordable market and have your foot in the door.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And you touch on, the type of personality that you need to have for house hacking. But here's the thing, Marc, I'm a bit of an extrovert when I need to be, but really I'm an introvert. And so my house hacking were separate units, like each were self-contained units. So I didn't have to interact with the others. Right.
Cool.
And so there's house hacking for introverts like me, and then there's house hacking for extroverts like you.
Yeah.
Okay. So 2 ways. All right. Let me ask you the 3 hot seat questions. Okay, you ready? So this is where I just ask a question and you say the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. And it's for fun. So just whatever comes to your mind. Okay. What are you most proud of?
Oh, that's a good question. What am I most proud of? I think the way I can balance work and play in my life, which, yeah. And I get that from my dad, I think. My dad is, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And okay, the next hot seat question. What is your biggest fear?
My biggest fear is not to fulfill my maximum potential. I'm almost obsessed with performance in every kind of realm. And it's interesting because when we were in your kitchen and you're talking about me being so in love with cars, I don't even like cars. Like, but I like performance, and I like winning. And I like people that win. So when we use Bob Task as a drag racer as an example, it was not about me loving cars. It was about really performing and going to the max of your ability in all the realms. And my biggest fear is to not live long enough to live them to my maximum.
Wow. Okay. That's super awesome. And it's funny because, I was thinking about, when you talked about just wanting to win, I've got an 11-year-old and he's like, Mom, if I'm going to do something, I have to win. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. Right. And I'm like, oh my God, like what am I setting him up for in life? Right. If his attitude is, I have to win at everything I do. Right. And a
Yes.
part of me is like, well, what's wrong with that? Like he's going in there and he's demanding to win. Right. So then my next thing to him is like, okay, well, if you want to win, you got to put in the time and the effort, right? Like you've got to
Yeah.
learn what it takes to win. And if you're going to lose, make sure you lose quickly and learn from that, because otherwise you're
Yes.
not going to benefit from that losing. So, all right, one last hot seat question. What is the one thing you cannot live without?
Water.
Okay, that's your answer. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in more than one realm, I really like being close to the water. So here in Port Alberni, we bought a place close to the water. I think that's my next. Like I don't intend on selling it ever, but I'm happy. I bought this with my partner, and she had described this where she wanted to live, because house hacking is not for her, and understandably, so she wanted to live somewhere you had a view of the sunset coming down over the mountains and on the water. And being in Vancouver, all I could think was like, oh, that's like West Van. And I don't really want to buy a $10 million house in West Van. So we were able to cut that in half and remove a zero and buy exactly what she wanted in Port Alberni.
Yeah.
And we have great neighbors. We're in a beautiful area, and we're really, really loving it.
Nice. Nice. Okay. That's awesome. Well, it's a real privilege for me, Marc, to be able to call you my friend. And so I just want to say that. Yeah, thank you. So for those of you who are watching, please, Marc carries his heart on his sleeve, and you ask him a question and he'll give you the answer. Like there's no really hiding anything or sugarcoating it. Like he really just tells it as it is, or the way he sees it. So please, if you have a question, want to connect with Marc, please reach out to him. He's chapter 8 of this book. So get your hands on this copy of the book. Okay, he's in chapter 8, his email's in there, and you can definitely reach out to Marc. Marc, do you have any last minute comments that you want to throw out to the world?
Yeah, it's been a pleasure actually meeting you, Huong. I've only known you for a little over a year, but it feels like
It's been over a year, a little,
just
yeah, a
just
little
a
over.
little over a year, and it just feels like I've known you forever. It's awesome, and yeah, thanks for bringing me in your network, and I'm just meeting so many awesome, lovely people, and I think this is just the beginning, and I'm really looking forward to see where this is going to bring us all.
Awesome. That's very sweet. Thank you. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you, Marc, for being on here and sharing your story and being in the book collaboration. Thanks everybody for watching.
Thank you. Bye-bye.